Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1973's Spanish JESS Franco film, Female Vampire. This is put out by Redemption on Blu-ray with the alternate horror cut, Erotic Kill, which I have not seen yet, but this is the kind of the main cut of the film, the extended erotic version. I think this is the kind of the real version of the film, Female Vampire. There is a quote on the front of the Blu-ray from Tim Lucas, editor of Video Watchdog, that says, "One of the most erotic and transgressive works in the horror genre." This is Lena Romay in Jess Franco's Female Vampire, 1973. This is, we're going to get into this film. This is a very, very popular film. This is actually, when you go on the internet, when you read publications, Female Vampire is really considered like the most popular Lena Romay film, the most popular Lena Romay Jess Franco film. And this was at the beginning of their working relationship. And I believe she was, she was currently married to someone else, and Franco might have been married at this time, but he was married previously to a costume designer, I believe, on some of his films. And this is the beginning of their working relationship, and for the future, their marriage, their romantic relationship and friendship. So let's look at Female Vampire right here, put out by Redemption on Blu-ray. This being one of the most popular films, this is a film that is very poetic, it's very lyrical, it's very slow and deep and romantic, dramatic, extremely erotic, very much so a sex film in many regards, and philosophical a bit, and relationships, and the quote-unquote monster with feelings, and the themes of desire, and the pitfalls of desire, and the pitfalls of your past, and the limitations and pleasures of desire are in this film. You look back at the Universal monster movies like Frankenstein and the Wolfman, and those were monsters that you had feelings for. It was emotional as well as scary. And this is a film that also deals with the villain and emotions wrapped up in that villain. A villain with a heart, so to speak. This is, from the title, a vampire film, but this is a Jess Franco vampire film. So instead of sucking the life from our actual life, from our blood, as traditional vampire stories go, in this film, the vampire is sucking the life out of you sexually, and at the moment of orgasm, and through your sexual fluids and your sexual organs. In a way, there was a film called Liquid Sky, and that something would happen at the moment of orgasm with an alien life force. And this film, in some regards, sexually speaking, reminds me of some of those storylines. So let's get into this movie here, Female Vampire. Danielle White, who is someone who has done tons of Jess Franco soundtrack scores for his films, does the score for this film. This might be one of the most minimalistic Jess Franco scored films I've seen. There are really only about three pieces, two pieces in particular, that are mimicked throughout the film, and then the one piece being the main theme of the film that starts the film, definitely. But a vast majority of this 100-minute film is in silence. And when I mean silence, sometimes you can't hear anything, not even just, maybe natural sounds. It's silent. And then the music kind of comes in and out and meanders in and out at its own will. And it's very, very interesting. The main theme of this film is romantic, quite dramatic and mysterious at the same time, um, and almost off-putting a bit in terms of maybe what you're expecting with a Franco film. Um, it doesn't have the vibe that you necessarily are expecting going into the film, possibly. The Daniel White main theme for female vampires is very, very interesting. And then we have some other pieces that are kind of sexy pieces, almost something that you might hear in kind of like a lower budget porno film, but with some style wrapped in there as well. Um, the music is not necessarily dark in this film, possibly at all, and for dark subject matter. This is a film where you will hear at times people playing by a swimming pool in the background, or a reverberated calling of a name through the fog-laden woods, and you know, just very, very quiet and very, very simple, slow throughout. And then we go into the cinematography and Jess Franco's style in this film. This is one of his films where it's rougher, shakier. We have zooms, but we have the camera really doing things where it's almost kind of backtracking. You can tell actually in the first 2 minutes of the film, when Lena Romay kind of comes through the fog into the camera, you can tell right off the bat Jess Franco's style for this entire film in just the first 2 minutes of the film. The way that he photographs her body and the shakiness of it, and almost at times it seems like going back and maybe it seems like filming like let me get that, let me get that, let me go over here, let me get that. It's one of Franco's more rougher cinema styles, and at the same time very artistic and very, very beautiful shots in here as well. Franco, you can tell, just there's a mystery about him because he was a jazz musician, and he's a surrealist and someone who lived cinema and art and music. And you can get that sense that things weren't being storyboarded necessarily, but it seemed like it was just on the seat of his pants. And that style is throughout. We also have some amazing reverse zoom shots that are also shaky and rough, but still awesome. And we have some amazing shots of the environment, the architecture, the castle, the mountains, the woods, the swimming pool areas, decks and patios near the swimming pool. I mean, this film really reminded me of like a tropical resort on vacation. That's what it really reminded me of. You go on vacation, a tropical resort. That's what it really kind of felt like. It reminded me of. And just beautiful, beautiful, foggy, and a kind of hazy atmosphere, out of focus atmosphere. Catch my drift. Now, this film, sexually speaking, as I said, this film has a ton of sex. It's a very, very erotic sexual film. The sex is the film. Sex is the story in many regards for this particular film. We have extended lesbian scenes and girl with guy, also masturbation scenes. Everything seems implied except for the masturbation scenes from Lena. And we have full nudity from men and women in this particular film, penis and vagina. And we also have a sadomasochistic scene in here that is very, very bizarre and weird, and there's some twists and turns in it, and it comes out of nowhere, and it kind of sucker punches you, and it's a very weird situation with two other characters as well that you've seen in many other Franco films, including Alice Arno. This is a very interesting emotional film with a lot of emotional kind of depth. We have a character who is, we have suicide contemplated and reading of poetry and mythology and philosophy, and we have voiceover narration in the film. We have just very heavy, slow moving atmosphere in this film. There is an element of disturbing darkness involving things like necrophilia in this particular film, but there's also an honest romantic yearning and the loss of ever being able to experience mutual pleasure and a relationship with someone else. As I said, fear and the pleasures of desire and the pitfalls of desire shown through the film. We have this amazing car with kind of bat wings on the front of the car and the narration above it. In many regards, this is, yes, it's a sex film, and yes, it's heavily sleazy. I mean, we have gynecological shots in this one, folks, but it's also an art house film, and it's also like a very kind of poetic art house film. I mean, literal kind of poetic narration and storytelling and reading from a book. And I mean, this is not a fast-paced film. This is not a film, maybe, you know, if you like other Franco films like Sadomania and things like that, you might not like this one. I mean, this is a totally this is in his much more lyrical, poetic films. You could almost compare it in some ways to Virgin Among the Living Dead, or Christina, Princess of Eroticism, in many regards. But this one, the horror is really in. I mean, there's no. This is not a severed limb, gothic, you know, or it is gothic, but it's not a severed limb, bloody, killing type of film, although there is murder in this film. The murder is through sex. And the horror of this film is in the occult, supernatural storyline and the aspects of almost unintentional murder from the main villain of the film. We have Jess Franco in this film. We have elements of questioning the occult. We also have a blind character, which is something that Franco seems to utilize greatly in his films. If you see a lot of blind characters that can almost read, you know, they have other senses. They have other ways of interpreting the environment and being able to hear people's thoughts or understand things. There is a very, very weirdly detective sexual scene involving the blind man in a woman's vagina in this particular film. Holy crap, was that insane. Reminded me of some Asian cinema, actually. From Takashi, Mikey Takashi, I believe his director's name is. From Ichi the Killer. That's what it reminded me of a little bit, that one section. But very, very sexual film. The sex scenes are longer and they're kind of softcore, but then with like kind of hardcore gynecological shots, if you catch my drift. And Lena Romay is really carrying this entire film, and she's mute in this film. She's not speaking at all. So you're really getting a sense of what's about to erupt with Lorna the Exorcist in the climax of the film. You can see that review on this YouTube page. And you're really going to see how she's starting, how it's going to be happening. You can also see her, like, the intensity and the weirdness and just being mute. And her sexuality and her exhibitionist vibes in this film. You're seeing it all. You can also see her look at the camera a few times in this film. And I think some people have said at the beginning of the film, she kind of bumps into the camera. So, you know, Franco was a director that allowed, you know, imperfections in that maybe, you know, that Hollywood wouldn't allow in. Okay, if you catch my drift. Franco, this is definitely an example of a sexual, very erotic film. Lena is very erotic, and the women that she's with and the situations. And wow, people talk about dance choreography. The sexual choreography in here, especially with Lena Romay, is unbelievable. And you're going to see some things at the end that mimic some other Franco films involving water. Okay, folks, this is Jess Franco's Female Vampire, 1973 from Spain, right here, folks. Lena Romay, thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarre YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like Female Vampire.